Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Coming up on today's show, the UK general election will take place in less than a week. And new data released earlier this week suggests that the Liberal Democrats could overtake the Conservatives, becoming the official party of opposition in this country. Now, our Downing Street correspondent, Simon Pusey, will soon be joining me with all the latest from the last full week of campaigning. And Kenya has been rocked by protests against a controversial finance bill, leading to deadly clashes between demonstrators and police. While Njiru, founder and executive director at Food for Education, will be joining me from Nairobi to discuss the impact of the protests on the country's youth. Wawira will also be talking about her company's recent recognition in Time. Then later, Michael Potter, former footballer and current affairs analyst, will be joining me from Accra to discuss the Euros and lessons Africa can learn about hosting major sporting tournaments on the continent. But first, in the latest developments surrounding the UK election betting scandal, a police officer in Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's close protection team has been arrested over alleged bets about the timing of the election. The scandal has also implicated members of both the Conservative and Labour parties, with allegations that at least 15 Tory candidates placed bets on the election date, potentially using insider information. This has led to calls for a thorough investigation into the matter, with critics arguing that it has undermined the integrity of Britain's electoral process. Elsewhere, with the ballot taking place in less than a week, the Liberal Democrats could potentially overtake the Conservatives in the number of seats they win in the upcoming general election, making the party the official opposition. Despite the Tories having a slightly higher vote share at 15% compared to the Lib Dems' 14%, the poll suggests that the Lib Dems could secure 71 seats in the House of Commons, while the Conservatives might get only 60. Meanwhile, Labour is predicted to win a landslide victory with a 250-seat majority, and the Reform Party is expected to secure around 18 seats, including the seat being contested in Clacton by the controversial former UKIP leader Nigel Farage. Well, for more on this, I was earlier joined in the studio by our Downing Street correspondent, Simon Pusey. Simon, I think, to be fair, the polls have never favoured Rishi Sunak in this election. We're just a week out. But some pretty shocking data we received earlier this week from Electoral Calculus suggests that the Lib Dems, who kind of disappeared during the whole 2019 Brexit election, they could become the official opposition. What do you think we should take from this latest data, just a few days left to when we cast our ballot?
Yeah, the polls haven't really shifted massively one way or the other, but this would be a very, very interesting outcome if this does happen. So, like you say, the Lib Dems really swallowed up in recent elections, and actually since Nick Clegg and, the U-turn they did on student fees, that they've really disappeared. But recently they've been really targeting seats they think they can win. It's usually Conservatives or Lib Dems in some of these sort of more rural seats. And to be fair, their leader, Sir Ed Davey, has done a pretty good campaign, quite a lot of gimmicks and gaffes and things that have put him in the spotlight. Yeah, and he comes across quite well. A new NPR poll, dubbed a mega poll by sort of Westminster geeks, puts the Lib Dems in second place, Tories winning just 60 seats, and Labour with a huge landslide on 450.
Goodness
There
me.
are polls every day, pretty much, but they all largely say the same thing, which is that Labour are massively ahead. Nothing has really happened. Ipsos had a poll out as well, which gives Labour a 23-point lead. Nothing's really happened dramatically that's going to change one way or the other. We were sitting here saying, well, a week's a long time in politics and we've got 6 weeks of campaigning, so anything could happen.
Gambling?
There have been things, so let's go to the things. Yeah. There have been a few things. So the gambling thing rumbles on, and it's now not a Conservative thing, specifically because Labour, Sir Keir, has dropped a guy called Kevin Craig as a candidate after he bet against himself, so said he was going to lose his seat. We've had David Tennant, the Doctor Who star actor.
Yes, offending our Kemi Badenoch.
And saying Kemi Badenoch, telling her to shut up about trans rights. That's gone down slightly interestingly. Yeah, there's not been a great reception to that. But he is a big star, and that's the kind of cut through that could affect things.
Absolutely.
A Labour member in his mid-20s has been arrested in connection with the honey trap scandal that's rocked Westminster, or a couple of weeks ago that was a big story. Lib Dems have just announced plans to legalise cannabis. There's kind of things that are rumbling on, and there's interesting stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
There was, you know, someone on the Conservative bus the other day.
Greenpeace.
So there's all these kind of things, but there's nothing really shifting the dial for the Conservatives.
What about the latest debate? Rishi Sunak still performing well, even though, of course, we know he's basically out, isn't it? But he's given it a good fight. A lot of people are starting to tear into Keir Starmer's beliefs.
Yeah, exactly. And things on trans issues, things on the Gaza-Palestine issue, that is a sort of hotspot for Labour, really. That's something they don't want to touch on. But I think for Rishi Sunak to perform pretty well in a debate, that's just not enough, is it? He needs a knockout blow. He needs something to absolutely blow up. And I think Sir Keir Starmer's absolutely fine if the debates kind of go okay. It doesn't matter if Rishi wins slightly, because he needs a huge sort of thing. And basically the polls, like I said, have been largely the same for weeks. I think my main concern at this stage is that people sort of up and down the country, just look at politicians and say they're all the same. Why would I bother? And I think my fear is there's going to be quite a low turnout. A lot of Conservatives come out to vote, right? They're older white people generally, the Conservative voters. I think they'll probably just stay home
Not
as opposed
reform.
to necessarily.
Nigel Farage is getting some big crowds, and we saw this in America.
Yeah.
Trump, Clinton, bunch of deplorables. If you vote for Trump, you're racist. They voted for him. Yeah,
and this NPR poll that I mentioned at the start, they've got 18 seats in that. That's a lot more than anyone would have thought. They don't have any seats at the moment. I think the problem for them is the electoral system we have does not favour them. So they might get quite a lot of votes. I think, like I think we've said before, they will take votes off the Tories. They won't necessarily get seats themselves because you need to win that seat in that sort of...
So it's almost like a wasted vote, saying.
Yeah, exactly. But, it's a vote that would take things off the Conservatives. So that's why the Tory line has always been a vote for reform is basically a vote for Labour.
Yeah.
So... But my main thing is apathy. I'm just worried young people will be like, none of these parties really favour Palestine, so why would I bother voting? Old people will be like, I vote for reform as a vote for Labour, I'm not going to bother. So I think we might see quite a low turnout. But it's going to be very interesting to see, isn't it? If we do see the Lib Dems as the official opposition, how will they respond to that? They've never been in that position in my lifetime. So it'll be really interesting. And, and we're just a couple of days away now.
I know. Whatever happens, Britain is changing colour. Blue or red, we'll just have to wait and see. Thanks, Simon. In Kenya, protests against the controversial finance bill escalated this week, with demonstrators storming the Parliament building and clashing with police. At least 5 people have been reported dead and dozens are injured. The protests, which started in the capital Nairobi, quickly spread countrywide and have seen thousands of young people take to the streets. The bill proposed to significantly increase the cost of goods and services in Kenya to help pay off foreign debt, a move that has sparked widespread outrage in the East African country. The cost of living in Kenya has soared in the past few years, with prices of food and fuel spiralling. My next guest, Wawira Njuru, is the founder of Food for Education, Africa's largest locally led and independently run school feeding programme, feeding more than 300,000 children every single day with close to zero waste. Food for Education was recognised as one of Time 100's most influential companies. Wawira Njuru, it's an absolute pleasure having you on Channels Business Global finally, because I know you are a busy lady, and I did just give you a couple of words off air because, of course, this week the world is watching Kenya. We were watching you a couple of weeks ago because, of course, everybody was celebrating. Slightly jealous. You got a state visit in America. We saw Ruto standing shoulder to shoulder with Biden. We were excited. And then, of course, there have been deadly protests this week. I know this has got absolutely zero to do with Food for Education, but of course, you're on the ground, Wawira. So first of all, can you just give us, your impression of what's happening, what your hopes are for Kenya? Of course, you're an entrepreneur. You're doing so well in the country. Not everybody feels that they're benefiting from the administration.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think, the world has been watching. And as Kenyans, I live in Nairobi. I've been in Nairobi all along. This has been happening. And it's been such a moment of reckoning for the country, especially because our young people are speaking. I'm a young person. The Gen Zs, I'm not a Gen Z, closer to Gen Zs, millennials. But millennials, Gen Zs, all the young people in the country are speaking. And they were trying to say that, first of all, they are frustrated because of the opportunities that are available in the country. And I think that's a Kenya issue. It's a continental issue. A lot of young people, Africa is a very young continent. Kenya average age is about 19. Wow. So these are the people who are out on the street saying that we are educated. We want opportunities that match our education. And even when we go to school, we want to feel like this country can offer us something. And so we saw them matching on the street, specifically speaking about the finance bill. The finance bill was to raise revenue from the government side, but would impose significantly more taxes on people. And people are saying that this is not the time for that. We've already seen a couple of new taxes imposed, and they were saying that, right now is not the time for that. And right now is not the time to sort of have more taxes. It's the time for us to feel like this country is giving us something. And yesterday we saw the president listen to that. The president say that I have heard you. I have seen what is happening. I've heard from the young people, and he rejected and withdrew the finance bill. Now, from a perspective of a Kenyan, I think that there was demonstrations that were peaceful, and there was some, people who were killed, which I think was very, very unfortunate, and something that we as Kenyans are shocked by and regret very significantly. I think this moment specifically means that young voices, not just in Kenya, across the continent, are starting to be listened to. And we should really push for young people to be part of decision making, to be part of how our countries run, because that is what will mean that decisions being made and laws that are being implemented are for young people, are able to benefit young people. And that's what at Food for Education we're very, very passionate about, that young people are part of the decision-making process and that they're being invested in to live a more prosperous and dignified life.
Here, Wawira, I was just nodding like a nodding dog to everything that you were saying. I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm kind of probably similar age for you, where we're kind of touching Gen Z, touching millennial. But we want peace, right? And as you said, the continent is young. It's a very young continent. Yes. So the young people have a significant sway in what is happening. But as you said, the president, William Ruto, he has conceded the finance bill won't be elevated at this point. So we're all keeping you in our thoughts and prayers. We want to talk about food for education. That's exactly why you're speaking with us today. You're not a spokesperson for the government. Talk to me about the recent recognition you've been receiving.
Thank you. So Food for Education is an organization that actually invests in young people, specifically children, the next generation here in Kenya. We've been providing school meals for the last 12 years, and right now provided over 50 million meals. We work every day with 330,000 children, giving them lunch every day. And the recognition we just received was being named as one of Time 100's most influential companies in the world, which is the first African nonprofit to be on the list, which is a very exciting milestone, but also a significant show of confidence in our model and our impact and what we're delivering every single day for Kenya's future, which is our children. So I was lucky enough to get a degree, to get an opportunity to go to Australia to do a degree in nutrition and food sciences. And it's at that time that I thought about starting Food for Education as a small passion project, feeding 25 children every day. That has grown that. I've grown that over the last 12 years with an incredible team, and now feed 330,000 children every single day.
It is exciting. We pray for peace, and of course, the development and the support of indigenous organisations such as yours, who are helping to fuel the lives of these young people who will be the next Rutos and Tinubus and Obamas. It's an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Wawira Nigeru, who is the founder of Food for Education, of course, have been recognised as being one of the best companies by Time magazine. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Coming up on Channel's Business Global, the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce has been on a trade mission to London this week, aimed at attracting foreign investment and strengthening bilateral ties between the two nations. The delegation is being led by the NBCC President and Chairman of Council, Ray Atterley, and we caught up with him during one of their meetings. And Michael Potter, former footballer and current affairs analyst, will be joining me from Accra to discuss the Euros and lessons that Africa can learn about hosting major sporting tournaments on the continent. All of this after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. The Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce has been on their annual trade mission to London this week, aimed at attracting foreign investment and strengthening bilateral ties between the two nations. The mission, themed Unveiling Untapped Trade Opportunities, has been organised in partnership with the Department for International Trade, the Institute of Directors and British Airways, among others. The delegation, led by the President and Chairman of Council, Ray Atterley, has engaged in a series of fruitful meetings, visits and discussions with key players from various sectors of the economy.
It's very important that we have this trade mission support a very important initiative of government, and that is the recapitalization of Nigerian banks. We know that the capacity of the banks today to support big ticket projects is limited. And so when the CBN came up with the recapitalization program, we jumped on board and decided to support the CBN. And so what we are looking forward to is promoting this program to the investment public in the UK and, of course, the international community, so that they can equally come and be part of it. We want to strengthen our banks. You can look at the multiply effects. If the banks have more capital, they'll be able to support more projects. And if more projects come on stream, employment is created, government will make more taxes, and it will be a happier environment for everyone. So that's why we're here, and this is just one out of many. There are so many things we want to do, and everything is geared towards helping the Nigerian economy improve, helping Nigerians have better lives. The Chamber's business goes very, very far. 60% of the top 100 companies in Nigeria are members of the Chamber. So what it means is that our reach is quite extensive, and we try to utilize this each time we are opportune. We equally dialogue with government to ensure that they understand the views of the private sector and what is coming from the international community, so that with a balanced perspective as they implement their policies, it helps them to stay on course and achieve targets they've set. This relationship is a very long one. You know, our history. We are two countries that are intertwined. We've had a very long history, and we continue to. I don't really see movement away from Britain. We have been partners, so we are not moving to or away. We are working together as we walk along, and we're implementing projects together, even till this date. So it's a relationship that has come to stay, and we are nurturing it. We are giving it every opportunity that we can to enhance more and more what it brings for our both citizens. Nigerians benefit when projects are implemented qualitatively by British firms, and the British citizens also benefit with the revenue that comes from such projects. So everybody benefits, and everyone is happy.
Now to my final topic, football. Germany's hosting of the ongoing Euro 2024 has provided valuable insights for African nations looking to host large-scale sporting events like we witnessed in Ivory Coast last year. By investing in infrastructure, improving organisation and transparency, promoting community engagement and adopting sustainable practices, observers believe that African countries can enhance their capabilities to host more international tournaments successfully. Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined by Michael Potter, a former footballer and current affairs analyst who joins me from Accra. Michael Potter, it's an absolute pleasure having you on Channel's Business Global. You're in Accra, not in Manchester. I think it's a bit sunnier in Manchester probably this week, but we'll leave that for another discussion. Let's talk about the Euros. I believe we have finished the group stage. Lots of people not really happy at the moment with what's happening in the Euros. I don't know why. Perhaps they were expecting the kind of glitz, glam and tricks that we saw in Abidjan for AFCON earlier this year. It's a bit fizzled, isn't it?
Yeah, I think from what I've seen of it, I think it's what we call football overload. We've had a lot of we had the FIFA World in Qatar, European Champions League, the Europa League, and now the Euros, and the season's just finished. The new fixtures are out for the remaining season, and I think a lot of people have come to the conclusion that wow, this is another competition. And it's not been as impressive as previous. I mean, Euro 2020 was a massive success, full of interest. But this time, for some reason, it's very slow to get off the ground. And even some of the favourite teams, they've been underperforming. And, it's really struggling. Let's hope the momentum, as we get into the last 16 teams, let's hope that the momentum picks up and it becomes very interesting. Look, I'm sure it will. All football competitions go through a dip, and they come in at the other end. And but let's see what happens.
Let's talk more about AFCON, which took place, of course, in the Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, earlier this year. A huge success for the country, but then also Africa, because even some of the big broadcasters in England missed out on AFCON because they kind of writ it off until they realised that, hang on a minute, everybody's talking about it. People love the football. However, it is going to be difficult for the continent to kind of replicate what we're seeing in Germany. But we could, and potentially that could be a good money earner. I know you've been helping with sports development and football in Accra. Do you see Africa potentially becoming hosts of big tournaments like the Euros, of course, not the Euros, but similar sort of thing?
World Cups, FIFA World Cups, Look, I had the pleasure of being in Ghana for the whole of AFCON, and although the Ghana team were a little bit disappointed, look, it was a fantastic competition, and it was full of thrills and spills, very good coverage. And, it's a big money earner, in the German economy, with the Euros, they're going to earn around about €1 billion out of this competition. And, it's going to kickstart the economy. But if we go back to AFCON, Côte d'Ivoire, the hosts, were nearly out of the competition. This is how the competition went. At the group stage, it wasn't until the last game that they finished third, and somehow they managed to qualify. They sacked the manager. It was a fairy tale story. They sacked the manager, brought in a younger coach, and eventually won the competition. And what a fantastic story to this. And to be honest with you, Côte d'Ivoire, they invested $1 billion in getting AFCON off the ground. The coverage was fantastic. The stadia in Africa, one of the biggest problems, unlike Europe, is the stadiums. In Europe, with all due respect, they have good stadiums and there's little or no work required to do at major competitions. But in the African countries, a lot of the stadiums need to be upgraded, reinvested in, and in some cases rebuilt.
Are these discussions taking place?
They are.
Michael, do people move on after AFCON, or are there stakeholders looking at what's happening in Germany? They're going to see what's happening in Paris at the Olympics next month, and they're saying, this could be us. We could get a piece of this multi-billion-dollar pie.
And I'm sure. Look, the opportunity is there. I mean, Morocco have got the next AFCON. And the dates have just been announced. December 22nd, it will run over Christmas and New Year down to January 22nd. And they're saying already that Morocco are going to produce the best AFCON ever.
Wow.
The best AFCON ever. And, you know, they had things in place for the last 2 years. But, you know, moving back, what do we need to do in Africa? Well, it's all about infrastructure and investment, sponsors. This is the main issues here. You know, building the new stadiums or upgrading them. Côte d'Ivoire, they prepared 4 new stadiums for the competition.
Yeah.
4 new stadiums. And they had to build roads and infrastructure all around these stadiums. Hotels had to be created and built.
Yeah.
The amenities, the restaurants, the food.
Yeah.
And, you know, it fueled the long-term economic growth in Côte d'Ivoire.
Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today. But as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channel's Business Global. Goodbye.